talking. So let's come together and get started. Um, Good. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining on time, right on time, and having 12 minutes of like a little chit chat, getting to know each other. That's always a nice meaning of these conversations, right? Nice meaning of these events where we get to see people after so long. But we hope that all of you are having a nice day. We are going to talk to each other a little bit right now because we are having some technical issues with the video. That is a very nice video and we really want to show you. So our colleagues are trying to fix that, and while they are fixing it in the background, we will talk to each other as I think that would be nice. Yeah. Do we want to maybe introduce ourselves, because we are not such a big room right now? So I think an introduction would be possible. Do we want to say our name, organization or country or whatever we want to say about ourselves, but also keep it a little bit brief so we can give a little bit of room for everyone to speak and introduce themselves? Yeah. Good. Do I want to start from who's present here and then I go to the table? Mara?
Hi everyone, my name is Mara Gilan. I represent Yango here today. I'm part of the policy team. I'm also in Yango with Sahar, with Kathy at some point, and with Juliet a bit as well. So, and I know that a few of you in the audience are also part of the constituency. So, yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you, Mara. Hello, everyone. I'm Sahar. I'm also just like Mara from Yango as well. I follow the negotiations on Yango's behalf, a lot of technical stuff, but also do a lot of policy and inclusion work, how young people and children are getting included into basically these conferences that happen and in the policies as well. So doing a lot of focus on A's and aims, and looking very much forward towards aims as basically arrangement for intergovernmental meeting, basically a negotiation agenda item where participation is discussed, and efficiency of these conferences are discussed. But super nice to be here with you all. I will pass to Kathy.
Thanks. And hello, everyone, for a very hot afternoon. I'm Kathy. Been in this convention since I was a teenager. Absolutely love it. I will probably stay here. Juliet said I'm still a teenager. That is a false statement. Um, my focus has always been on civil society empowerment and advocacy in this convention, looking at multilateral policy, and in particular working with whether it's government, whether it's intergovernmental organizations, whether it's civil society grassroots initiatives, whether it's businesses, looking at how multi-stakeholder can collaborate together to help the multilateral environmental agreements and the wider UN process deliver our goals synergistically. And at the moment, biggest passion is looking at how we can advance nature and climate priorities synergistically and make everything better and save our planet, save our birds, and all that. By day job, I work at an NGO called the BirdLife International. It's a partnership in 119 countries, so you might not have heard of BirdLife, but you've probably have heard of the BirdLife organization in your country. Yeah, I think that's pretty much me. And then on to the most fantastic Juliet.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I don't know how to go after that. I've had I'm fantastic. I need to sit down with everyone who says I'm fantastic and ask them why they think I'm fantastic. My name is Juliet Grace Luede. I am from Uganda. I follow UNCCD. I'm the global focal point for the UNCCD Youth Caucus. So everything to do what Yango does, replicate that to UNCCD, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I also support my country. I negotiate for Uganda on climate, following ACE and gender as well. So, but then when you find yourself in these spaces, because of synergies, you have to follow everything and understand what's going on. So that's why I find myself in UNFCCC, UNCCD, and CBD most of the times. What do? I'm currently in transition. I don't work for anyone but myself. Yes. Lovely to meet you all.
Great, thank you so much. Do we want to turn the mics on one by one and start to introduce ourselves as well? Just saying names and where we are from. I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. Sorry for forgetting that we have very important fellow contact point as well from the UN CPD youth constituency. So I will pass the floor to Hader. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you all.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Heitor de Lasta. I'm from Brazil. I'm policy co-coordinator for the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. That is the constituency for the Convention on Biological Diversity. Yes, hello. So basically that I mainly focus on the discussions on biodiversity finance, resource mobilization, and also synergies. So pleasure to join you all.
Great, thank you so much, Hader. And do we want to start with a quick introduction of ourselves? So do we want to go maybe from this side and
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name. Huh? Okay, thank you. Youth at heart, always. Now, my name is Alejandro Kilpatrick. I'm the manager of the capacity building subdivision at the UNEP Triple C, and have the pleasure also being supporting the coordination of the Youth for Capacity program. And I'm also leading from the UNEP Triple C the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building program. So we're working very closely with the other secretariats on capacity building in the context of synergies. So thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Geraldine Nintema. I'm from Uganda. I'm currently a student, so I'm on a study leave, but I'm here to negotiate for Uganda. I'm following on transparency. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sheikh Al-Taneji, and I come from the United Arab Emirates. I work in a master company. It's a renewable energy company. Mainly, my role in that company is to focus on youth program initiative. You might have heard of it. It's called Youth for Sustainability, which aims to empower the next generation of sustainability leaders, equipping them with the skills and knowledge they need to excel in the field of sustainability. And what's interesting about that doesn't only target our UAE base, but as well international. So it's a global program. With that, I'm also representing the UAE as a negotiator on ACE and gender. And I'm very much happy to be here today and get to collaborate and build collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your presentation of yourselves and the opportunity to convene this important topic. My name is Gennaro. I'm from Chile. I'm currently here as a negotiator on finance. Another Chilean. And yeah, I was a youth negotiator last year and now leading negotiations on finance for this SPs. A part of that, outside the UNFCCC, I'm the global focal point on financing for development youth constituency, and head of research and advocacy at the Global Youth Coalition. So yeah, passing to next.
Perfect. Pleased to meet you all. My name is Maximilian. I'm from Austria, representing Yes Europe. And my professional work usually is on transportation and housing. So this is where I have an expertise on. I also have to say it's my first SB compared to many, many others. So please don't mind if you're talking about a lot of abbreviations, and once I have figured what you're actually talking about, you're already way ahead. But I'm here to engage as well, and I'm pleased and thankful that you have organized that as well.
Thank you, Maximilian. And hopefully after this session, we will get to at least stable or initiate making like a standardized base for all of us, so that we can understand those abbreviations, and we can understand, even if it's our first SPs, we can understand what is happening, for example, inside the negotiations, at least to a bit, or happens all in these conventions, right? So this is a beginning, and we want it to be looking like a very interactive beginning, right? Because we want to co-create this beginning with you, because everybody has a different level of knowledge about the Rio conventions existing. But let's make it a fun way of standardizing our knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you for that, because this is my first SP as well. I am Tanushree Jain. I'm from India, and I'm representing the International Pharmaceutical Students Federation, also called IPSF, who are observers to the UNFCCC. I'm serving them as the chairperson of public health, so here to advocate for health as an argument for climate change and make that connection, because right now we don't have a specific track for health as we do for other things. So following loss and damages, adaptation, just transition, and others for health-related matters. I'm also chairing the Health Education and Literacy Working Group for the WHO Youth Council. And thank you for this session. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, so my name is Reinout. I'm from Belgium. I represent Climate Talks, a youth-led NGO that aims to make climate policy accessible for young people. My main focus here is on the global stocktake, but I also have followed the presidency event last Monday on synergies between the Rio conventions as well. And it's also my first SB here as well.
Hello, my name is Paul. I'm a student here from Germany. This is also my first SB, and it's already my last day, so I'm just trying to collect as many impressions as possible. I have a blog seminar on the CBD next weekend in my university, so I hope to learn something for that here.
Hello, I'm Timon. I'm also from Germany. I'm representing a rural youth movement, and that's it. It's my first SB too, so.
Hi, my name is Benjamin. I'm from Chile. This is my first SB, but I have been in 5 COPs, so it's a little bit new, this space. I am the founder of an NGO called 1.5, that is a youth think tank in Latin America and in Chile.
Hi. Oh my gosh. Hi, my name is Almi. I'm an intern with the Secretariat helping support the Youth for Capacity team. And previously, and not when I'm at work, I sometimes engage with the Finance and Markets Working Group of Youngo, and I supported their work on the ground at COP29 on the NCQG. And thank you for hosting this session.
Hi everyone, my name is Tsem and I'm from Hong Kong, also like an intern working at the capacity building team of the secretary. Nice to meet you all here and thank you for the session. I'm personally also interested in youth empowerment and engagement, especially in the climate change context. So really looking forward to what these sessions would uphold.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Same as the girls here. I'm an intern in Eva's team, and it's really nice to be here with you. I'm from Brazil, and yeah, well, hope you have a great session.
Hello, everyone. My name is Solomon T. Mali. I'm from Liberia, West Africa. At the moment, I'm a student at the United Nations University. And I'm really happy to be here because at the moment, my student group, we are working as student consultant with UNCCD, where we are looking at how we can build synergies among the Rio conventions and that of the standard framework. So I thought otherwise that I'll come here. I believe I will meet experts as well as practitioners who are into seeing how well collaborations can be established among the Rio conventions and that of the standard framework in order to have holistic actions towards various risks like child risks. That's where I'm basically focused on child risks. So I'm happy to be here with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Roxani. I work for UNDP, the UN Development Programme, and I manage Youth for Climate, which provides direct and flexible seed funding to youth-led climate actions around the world. And Youth for Climate is Youth for Capacity's sister initiative.
Hi everyone, my name is Fatima Ismail. I'm from Ireland and I'm the Climate Youth Delegate. So I'm just here tracking different negotiations, mainly just transition, but also stuff about gender equality as well, because as part of my mandate, I will be preparing Ireland for the Council of the EU next year when they'll be hosting it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grégoire. For the past 3 years, I've been working with the United Nations Capital Development Fund on a program called LOCAL, which seeks to provide climate finance access to local governments. I'm based in Senegal, West Africa, but I just recently joined the UNFCCC Secretariat. And so it's my first day, well, it's my first week at the SBs, and I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you.
Good. Hopefully, it's not your first day. That would be a very exciting thing to do on your first day. Well, we would be very lucky to have you on your first day attending this session. Good. So, is there anybody in the room who have not introduced themselves? Want to? Oh yeah, Eva. What? No, we keep the best for the last. Yes.
Thanks, Sahar. Hi, everyone. I'm Ava. I'm with the capacity building team of the UNFCCC, supporting the Youth for Capacity program, which are the hosts for today's session. But huge shout out to the youth constituencies of the Rio Conventions who made this session possible in the first place. Given that it's the Rio Conventions that we're talking about, we did have a bit of some funky Brazilian music to start us off with that unfortunately did not play. But in the spirit of Rio, I think this might be the perfect segue to learn what the Rio Conferences even are and how we can enhance synergies and be a part of that.
Yeah, and before I pass it on to, for example, Amara, who will be taking us further into what Rio Conventions are, what are the things that already exist, let's take the temperature of the room, right? And this is, as I said, a knowledge sharing session. We are going to make it super interactive and there is no wrong answer in this room, right? Even I don't know 100% about all three of them. So can you just do a raise of hand and say what do you think the Rio Conventions are? Do any of you know what the Rio Conventions are? How many of these are? What do they do? Yeah. Sure, we take that and that.
And just so you have the UNFCCC is one of them. You have then the one on biodiversity convention and the one on combating desertification. But what the UNCCD and the UNCBD do, that I'm not sure. I'm mostly familiar with UNFCCC. So.
Yeah, they were decided upon on the Rio Earth Summit in June 1992. Of course, they have been negotiated before.
Great. What else do we know? Anybody who thinks anything about the Rio Conventions? Literally any fact? Oh, yeah.
Don't they have a joint capacity building program?
Well, we will find out. Yes. And also, oh yeah, feel free to go ahead.
Yes, you said anyone can speak a fact about the Rio Convention. One fact that I know about, every convention in some decisions talk about collaboration with other Rio conventions, but in practice, we do not see such.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And also, in the Rio Earth Summit that was mentioned, one very interesting fact and important fact is also that was the first time ever when children, young people were mentioned and recognized as the key stakeholder to achieve sustainable development. So it's also one of the movement to to recognize that this is embedded in the system, which we are kind of becoming a part of slowly, and have to kind of attend negotiations and remind them that, yeah, don't forget us, don't leave us behind. But to learn more about the Rio Convention, we will hear from Mara. Yeah, maybe this.
Can you hear me? I think first and foremost, we can hear from the colleagues that have shot a very nice video back at COP29. And they have been an active part in exploring the synergies, especially from a youth perspective. We have also worked on papers in our constituencies on these synergies. So yeah, let's hear from them.
The Rio Conventions were agreed in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 at the Earth Summit. They were agreed to try to tackle the interlinked issues of biodiversity loss, desertification and land degradation, and climate change. The Rio Convention are three. The first one is the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The second one is CBD, which stands for Convention on Biological Diversity. And the third one is the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. As you can imagine, these three conventions are related because the issues of biodiversity
All right, so just a little overview of what was mentioned. Here are the three conventions. The CBD stands for Convention on Biological Diversity, the UNFCCC, and I'm thinking of Maximilian now because he mentioned the acronyms, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the UNCCD is, of course, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. You've already heard my colleagues share a bit about each of the conventions. You're all fairly familiar with the UNFCCC since we're here. About the CBD, one of the highlights that you could really pay attention to is the Global Biodiversity Framework, which is one of the main instruments of the convention. And then on the UNCCD, one highlight would be the connection between the SDGs, especially the SDG 15 and land degradation neutrality. So moving on. The synergies, because maybe we need to define the word as well before diving into our exploration. The synergies are existing similarities that really can be enhanced and used to create a better result than the sum of the parts, which in this case are the conventions. Some of the advantages that we can obtain from taking a synergistic approach are that by using integrated planning, we avoid overlaps, we avoid conflicts, as Hator was mentioning, and we can tackle solutions together. Some other co-benefits, especially in this climate of underfinancing and budget cuts, is the fact that we can plan our resources together. And Jeff, the Global Environmental Facility, which is actually one of the institutions, one of the few institutions that work with all three conventions. It's actually dispersing the funds for the conventions, is really looking into these synergies. Last but not least is stakeholder mobilization. And this is similar to what we're doing today, because as you can see, youth are mobilized across all conventions, indigenous peoples, as Juliet was mentioning, are negotiating their positions in a unitary fashion across all three conventions. So it's really important to also communicate, coordinate, and mobilize together. I'm going to pass it on to Sahar to tell you more about the youth constituencies.
Good. Thank you so much, Mara, for that. And I think that we can also say that we will keep the floor open for questions as well. If at any point you have some questions, please feel free to raise your hand so that we can all discuss it together. We can also ask it. Because we have, for example, Haiti here, who is from the youth constituency of the Biodiversity Convention. Then we have Juliet here from the youth constituency of desertification. And then we have all of us here from Yango as well. So I'm just going to real quickly talk about Yango and then pass the floor to Juliet and Hater to talk about biodiversity and desertification. So just to mention a little bit, because I know that some of you mentioned already that you are part in some way or another have either followed Yango in some form or have been part or are still part of it. So Yango is the oldest and largest UN youth constituency that exists. Internal mechanisms and decision makings of Yango, I don't want to bore you with that, but we basically go ahead with a consensus-based decision making. We have mechanisms and also visions so that everybody's voice counts. How we also engage to the UNFCCC system basically is via our working groups, but also also we had different policy submissions as well. So there are working groups. When we say working groups, they are like collective group of people interested in, for example, action for climate empowerment or gender, which are really like thematic UNFCCC agenda items. But then we also have cross-cutting ones. And when we say cross-cutting, we mean, for example, not exactly that topic is being broadly discussed at the UNFCCC, but is relevant to what is being discussed at the UNFCCC. So, for example, super crucial, super number one example is like human rights, right? And then we have, for example, the engagement of children and young people, engagement and participation. For example, we have science, so on and so forth. And then we also have some of our operational working groups, which are focused on how we make things work in the constituency. So we have the communication, we have the conference of youth. You might have all heard about the COI. This year will be the COI 20. So we have the conference of youth working group. We also have actions and policy team, which Mara is representing as well. So policy team, a policy working group or policy team, and also awareness team as well. We also work very extensively on global youth statement, which is our very signatured youth policy demands. But to maybe summarize global youth statement, I'll pass it on to Mara real quickly.
Yes, I've got the pitch ready at any time of day or night. The Global Youth Statement is our main policy output. It's more than a document, it's a process through which we involve children and youth from all around the world. And when we say that, we mean that. It's more than 150 countries that our contributors come from. And I think I'm going to use this opportunity also to pique your interest in contributing to the Global Youth Statement, because we're going to issue our call for inputs immediately after the SBs. So there you can either contribute through a working group in Yango, with your NGO or institution, as an individual as well, or by participating in local conferences of youth and regional conferences of youth. Now, the Global Youth Statement is tailored to the negotiation agenda of each COP. So it's really relevant to the negotiations. It makes recommendations that can be literally copied and pasted into text. It uses UN language in its negotiation aligned version, and a bit more accessible language in its full version, which also has thematic areas. So do consult it to check the position of children and youth, not just from Yango, but from beyond the constituency. And I do encourage you to take part in the process, and once it launches this year, towards the end of September, to use it in your advocacy work for COP30. I want to segue into the strategic policy position, because this is our second policy output, second most important policy output, because the Global Youth Statement is something that changes from year to year. We have developed this strategic position that you can use on a permanent basis. It contains our core recommendations, our core proposals on children and youth participation in the processes and on thematic demands. And it's something that we've just launched during the youth orientation session. It's fresh. Do scan the QR code, take a look at it, share it, and use it in your messaging. It's an easy way to get some refined and well put together messages on the main negotiation areas and beyond, like human rights, child participation, etc. Thank you very much, Sahar.
Thank you, Mara. Good. Then we move to the next constituency, next meaning of youth engagement in a different Rio Convention, which is the Convention on Desertification. And for that, I will pass it on to Juliet.
This works. Thank you very much. I don't know how to come after Yongo, but I'll try my level best, and also try not to be super repetitive, because if you pay close attention, the constituencies all serve a similar role, play a similar role, which is bringing young people into these spaces to engage. The other mic does not like me. To play a similar role, which is really bringing young people into the processes and procedures of how these conventions work. So what's the Global Youth Constituency on Land and Desertification, which is the UNCCD Youth Caucus? We are a formal and dedicated youth engagement mechanism of UNCCD. And like I mentioned, how to bring young people into this space. Our history really is, so last year, UNCCD turned 30, right? And in turning 30, before UNCCD turned 30, they were thinking, how do we get young people to engage? It wasn't clear at that time. But because we are seeing what the other youth constituencies were doing, I think Secretariat was inspired, seeing Yungo. I think Yungo must be one of the oldest youth constituencies, what they were doing. So conversations happened. And at COP14, we had our first decision by the parties saying, yes, we need to adopt a youth platform for this youth engagement because it's critical and it's important. But then in that rethinking of, yes, we do need to adopt this at COP15, again, the parties asked the Secretary to come up with a youth engagement strategy. Because for us as UNCCD, it's not a matter of let's engage young people, but what does this youth engagement actually mean? I'm happy to say that now we have a youth engagement strategy, which sort of is our Bible and our work plan when it comes to the engagement of young people within the UNCCD processes. If you could go to the next slide. And speaking of history, like even in the video earlier, I did mention this. History is something that we should never forget. History is something that we always need to pay close and keen attention to, even as we continue to evolve. Like I mentioned, I think the first engagement within UNCCD for young people was at COP13, and we are now at COP16. So that means 3 COPs later, we've actually evolved really well. Then in December of 2018, again, during UNFCCC, so that's why we give a lot of credit to UNFCCC, the youth constituency, for birthing us in a way. Young people that were engaged met with the secretary to sort of share their lived experiences and what it means to have a youth constituency. And then March of 2019, again, MGCY, which is the Major Group for Children and Youth, that also houses different constituencies that are looking at different SDGs as well. We had an annual meeting in Paris and again met with the secretariat to sort of nudge them even a little bit more to ensure that this youth coordination and engagement does happen. And of April 2019, we sought a procedural mandate. So like most youth constituencies, we are young people from civil society organizations because if we all know very well, these conventions are party-driven processes, right? But and most of us come from civil society, youth-led civil society organizations, and often it's tricky to even have a party badge. So in seeking this mandate, we're trying to make sure that we remind the secretariat that while you work with parties, it's actually us who do the heavy lifting in complementing what governments do. So that's why it was important to seek this procedural mandate. Last year at COP16, the parties did welcome the youth engagement strategy for UNCCD. What this means now is now we can officially start to implement this youth engagement for UNCCD and start to track how young people do engage within UNCCD and then within the processes and procedures. And we are still growing. So if you have any awesome ideas, you want to come join us, that's an advert. Please do check us out on social media, and happy to collaborate and work with you all.
Thank you so much, Juliet. And with that, if you have any questions, you can also ask right now or later, but also reach out to Juliet as well if you are interested to join the UNCCD. And with that, now we will get to know about the youth constituency for the Biodiversity Convention, and I would pass the floor to Heather.
Yes, hello again. Thank you all. So another convention is the Convention on Biological Diversity, or the CBD. As we heard from Mara, the three objectives of this convention is the conservation of biodiversity, the sustainable use of biodiversity, and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits that arise from the use of genetic resources from biodiversity. The Global Youth Biodiversity Network, so GYBN, is founded in 2010. It's a global youth coalition of young people and youth organization. We are the international platform for mobilizing young people at the CBD, which means that we basically also works in a very similar way from Yango and UNCCD Youth Caucus regarding the engagement of young people at the convention itself, but also all the advocacy work regarding youth priorities and trying to shape biodiversity policy at international and creating dialogues at national level. Something that GYBN do as different ways, that GYBN also organizes ourselves in an implementation organization. So GYBN have different structures from international level. At regional level, we have our regional chapters that represent all the 5 UN regions. And we also have our national chapters that now have over 60 national chapters. That is where we collect all our inputs, where we create capacity buildings, where we listen, and where we implement projects. So GYBN is this platform that is trying to bridge international policy and national implementation, and creating the dialogue between these different layers into biodiversity policy and implementation. So I would also be happy to connect more if you'd like to know more about GYBN, if you'd like to join from your region, or even to understand if you have a national chapter already in your country. That's it on my side. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ether. Do you want to talk a little bit about, for example, the Joint Youth State Constituency Submission and the COP decision that came out as well?
Yep, you can hear me a little few more minutes. Do you mind, please? I need to share the screen, but I think I need you to stop sharing your screen to allow me.
You can still share?
Now
No.
don't, but it worked. Okay, now I can again. I think you can see my screen already. So I'm going to speak a little bit about also the COP decisions and the joint youth statement that we constructed. So just to remember, as we have heard, yet the 3 Rio conventions, it's nothing new. Synergy discussion is also nothing new. So the Rio conventions, they were established in the Rio summit in '92 in Rio, where all the 3 UNFCCC, UNCCD, and CBD were created. But on recent COP negotiations and COP decisions, Synergy's discussions have started once more, or just keeping the process, to receive a lot of attention in new discussions, new opportunities, and new challenges as a whole. If we go for COP28 from UNFCCC, for example, on the outcomes of the first global stocktake, we have 3 main paragraphs that is highlighting Synergy's discussions, considering paragraph 33, where they are emphasizing the importance of conserving, protecting, and restoring nature and ecosystems, mainly focus on the discussions on the support for nature and ecosystems, on global emissions. Also, paragraph 34, where they're particularly mention efforts to halting and reversing deforestation and forest degradation, as I mentioned, to enhance forest carbon stocks in developing countries and the mitigation adaptation approaches. And also paragraph 163, where they are directly mention the encourage of parties and non-party stakeholders to enhance cooperation on the re-implementation of all the three Rio conventions. COP16 from UNCCD also have some highlights, particularly on decision 16/8 on promoting and strengthening of the relationship with other relevant conventions. So we have a few paragraphs that are highlighting the leverage of synergies of the three conventions, the interlinkage between climate change and biodiversity loss, and the need of implementation, for example, nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based approaches. Also inviting parties to cooperate among their national focal points of the Rio Conventions to try to minimize policy fragmentation, and the request to the Secretariat itself to strengthen collaboration within the secretariats of all the three Rio conventions. And finally, when we go to the CBD, CBD have recently, at the end of 2022, approved the Global Biodiversity Framework. The framework set basically goals and targets from the 10 years, so until 2030. It have a mission on 2030 to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, and a vision for 2050 to live in harmony with nature. So the framework is basically a guiding document for all signature countries or parties on what they should do to achieve the common goals of the convention itself. There are three main targets that is particular discussion synergies as well. That's very relevant. So we have target 8 that is considering to minimize the impact of climate change and ocean acidification on biodiversity. What also mentioned directly nature-based solution and ecosystem-based approaches. Target 11 mentioned specifically to restore, maintain, and enhance nature contributions to people, once more mentioning nature-based solution and ecosystem-based approaches. And target 19, that is the target related with resource mobilization. We have the general paragraph to mobilize at least $200 billion per year by 2030, which includes, among other aspects, also optimizing co-benefits and synergies of financing target biodiversity and climate crisis. At COP16 on CBD, we have different decisions that was also highlighting synergies. So decision on biodiversity and climate change, we had paragraph that was stressing the importance of national focal points to also raise awareness on the relevant interlinkage between biodiversity and climate change, and the importance of integration on biodiversity and social safeguards in mitigation and adaptation measures or climate action as a whole. On the resource mobilization decision, we also have a request to the Secretariat to conduct a study on the relationship between biodiversity and climate finance to try to track synergies and understand avoiding double counting. And the decision on comparison with other conventions, there is a whole paragraph that is also calling on strengthening national focal points of all the three Rio conventions and to improve dialogues and process relevant to all of them. So a general approach, we can see that policy coherency in this very recent years are moving in all three conventions, and all three Rio conventions are creating their own decisions on that. We also have different presidencies work being done on Rio conventions. So we had a joint working plan between CBD and UNCCD on early 2012. For COP28, we also had a joint statement on climate, nature, and people, which is a really nice one, and I highly recommend for all to read it. We had a joint liaison group from the Rio Conventions as well that is trying to improve this dialogue, and it's it's not a recent group. And other presidencies that are also dialoguing. So Rio Trio initiative, the troika between the three UNFCCC co-presidencies, and different high-level dialogues on synergies between biodiversity and climate change. We have next steps that are going to move further with this agenda. So the CBD is organizing technical information exchange on enhanced cooperation and policy coherence to support Rio Conventions. We had one on this Sunday, back-to-back with SB 62. We had the potential joint working program on new conventions that's also being discussed at this stage. Under the CBD, you have ecosystem-based adaptation, nature-based solutions, and eco-disaster risk reduction voluntary guidelines, or the supplementary material for voluntary guidelines that is also being built, that is promoting these discussions. And under UNFCCC, we have a lot going on that is going to on the road to COP30, and a lot of discussions regarding forests, nature, biodiversity, working programs, ATEG, how to include it at Baku to Berlin roadmap, or even the presidency proposal on the Tropical Forest Forever facility that is an international financial mechanism to support forests as a whole. One particular decision from CBD that gives the opportunity for us as youth constituents to work together was the CBD decision that invited parties, observers, and all stakeholders to submit views and options for enhanced policy cohesion, which includes a potential joint working program of the Rio Conventions. So together, all of us, the three youth constituencies, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, Yango UNCCD Focal Caucus, we organized ourselves to develop this joint youth position. So it was a collective process. We did a collective workshop with focal points from the three youth caucus. We identified current challenge, we identified challenges and gaps in policy coherency, opportunities and recommendations, and we also highlighted key considerations for this potential joint work program. After doing the draft, the document itself was also further refined into consultation and validation process within each of the three youth constituencies, respective communities. I invite you all to access the youth joint submission. Just in a short way to present it, but you can read the document as a whole. We are bringing these three different parts of the document: challenge and gaps in policy coherence, where we are mentioning negative impacts of climate actions on biodiversity and people, institutional and data incoherence, policy and frameworks incoherence, private sector misalignment, and finance gap. So here the main discussion is to the fact that some decisions, and in particular decisions regarding climate actions, such as afforestation projects, monocultures, or even carbon markets, they are creating harms to biodiversity, to land, and to violation of human rights. And also the incoherence as a whole between different decisions, but mainly the incoherency between the different commitments that parties need to do. So if you go for the national determined contributions, or the national biodiversity strategies and action plans, or the land neutrality targets that are from the Rio Conventions, we need to understand that how it's working together, how it's moving on the same direction. And finally, of course, the finance gaps that is trying to understand how we can improve resource mobilization and allocation also for those on the ground and those implementing projects in a synergistic way. We presented recommendations and opportunities for policy coherence, where we highlighted the strength of ongoing initiatives and platforms, participation of right holders in local cases, promote of strong policy alignment across frameworks, developing a comprehensive impact assessment framework, and harmonize monitoring and reports. So you can see that basically we are trying to present possible ways to move further regarding challenges and gaps, but I just call attention for the local cases and the right holders' perspective. That is something very, very, very relevant for us to identify what is already going on. And finally, considerations for the potential joint team working program. So how the two group conventions could improve the way that they are working together, how they can define a clear modus operandi, how they can understand collaborative implementation mechanisms, the integration of safeguards and human rights-based approaches, the ensuring of right holders' meaningful participation, intergenerational equity and youth-led climate justice, the enhanced finance synergies, and the support for the implementation of evidence-based actions and initiatives. So this is just a very short overview, so do not take too much time, but once more, now you can access the Youth Joint submission and you can reach out to any of the youth constituencies if you'd like more information and dialogue. So thank you.
So we don't know if you could hear that, but everybody was clapping. I think that it was really insightful. And yes, maybe if you can share your email address or something like this for people on the screen, maybe towards the end, Heather, so people can maybe reach out to you if they want to write down the email address. Thank you so much. With that, it was really interesting to hear from, for example, how these three constituencies are working, what these three conventions are. But now we will hear a little bit about case studies where these three planetary crises interact and what happens when they interact and why policy cohesion is important. So I pass the floor to Kathy.
Great. Wow. So last night at about 1:30 a.m., I thought, I know the secretary would prefer slides, but so you're not going to have any slides. Although I think, Sahir, you might want to go and do the presentation mode so for others can see it when we do have slides. So I will do a bit of a spiel for about hopefully 5 minutes, not too long. So we leave a bit of buffer time for you folks about my guiding question was present real world examples from countries or projects that successfully integrated real conventions actions. So I think looking first from a broad picture, and also everyone need to pay attention because there will be a question at some point that I will randomly call on people. So do pay attention. That is how I threaten people at events these days. So first, big picture thinking, right? There is unprecedented attention on the synergistic collaboration between these three conventions right now. This week alone, right? We started Sunday with a whole afternoon of CBD mandated technical information exchange on real convention synergies, where it's, I would say, the first time that parties really spoke up about these issues. Palau did a super powerful, a little bit long statement about the challenges that they face in communities and why, they said they wish that we had this discussion as a mandated event as negotiations back when Paris was first negotiated. But now that I think it's not, it's better late than never, right? So first I want to say that there's so much momentum on this, and very biasly, this is the topic of the year. And from constituency side and from many civil society stakeholders, many NGOs, people have various ideas about what would an advanced synergies at multilateral level looks like. I think from me as a person and from BirdLife as an organization, our view is having a joint work program between the three conventions, which is also what many parties prefer, is really the best way. So for those of you who are parties or are talking to your parties, tell them we need a joint work program across conventions. And or other ways to strengthen synergies. I think it's clear from all parties and others that we need synergistic actions across all levels, right? We need them in multilateral policy, we need them in national planning, we also need them in implementation. So we can't just say, right, we only focus on national planning and then that will solve everything. We have to have synergies at all levels. And then yesterday, we were at the Brazilian presidency-led event on Rio Convention Synergies, where the room was flooded. And there was also, of course, the Ocean Dialogue yesterday and today. And, thinking about this year itself within the convention, which is something that I like to say, is that we sometimes underestimate how much interest UNFCCC there is, because we think, oh, CBD is very keen, UNCCD is very keen, but UNFCCC, you don't really hear people being like, you don't hear negotiators talking about nature, nature, nature. Well, I think that's a misconception that sometimes we confuse ourselves, right? If we think about finance, there was the Nature-Based Solutions Finance Forum, and we think about technology. 2 of the 16 pillars of the technology mechanism 5-year work plan is about ocean, is about water, energy, food system. If we think about mitigation, the mitigation work program just had a dialogue on forest in Panama. If we think about adaptation, the global goal adaptation indicators have quite a few draft indicators on ecosystems, right? So I think another point is not to underestimate how important it is. But talking back to the topic, I would say perhaps I would talk 3 points. One is around multilateral, one is national, one is implementation. And Eva, I promise they're all on theme. I know I'm supposed to talk about implementation, but about 2 months ago, PCCB Network hosted a webinar with BirdLife International Paris Committee on Capacity Building, which is the constituted body within UNFCCC that deals with capacity building, one of the most peaceful space in this convention. So the PCCB network hosted a webinar with the Convention on Migratory Species and BirdLife International 2 months ago on the link between energy in synergies topic. For example, reconciling offshore energy with nature, climate, and people. And actually, half of my time is seconded by BirdLife to the UN Convention on Migratory Species. And we coordinate their multi-stakeholder energy task force with over 20 governments, most of the multilateral development banks, all those intergovernmental organizations, and dozens of NGOs. And so here comes the question. Who in the audience would like to say what you think the nexus between energy and nature is? I know a lot of people think about, oh, nature is very adaptation thing, or it's about planting trees. Energy is about building wind farms. What do you think the synergies is? What do you think the impact of energy on nature is? What do you think the impact of nature on energy is? There's no wrong answer.
Well, maybe we can start with the potential negative sides, so then we can go through the positives, of course. So yeah, I'm not talking on behalf of Chile, please. And we can say, like, for example, energy systems require big infrastructure that uses the space where originally is inhabited by natural species. Like you see wind turbines also affecting the pattern of birds flying, and you get solar panels and then use sun that could be used by plants underneath, and who knows if the people that owns those lands then allow other species to walk around those solar panels and so on. But I imagine that maybe someone else can come in, or on the positive sides as well, how this can change and actually become synergistic.
Any other thoughts from folks? I would say, again, it's something that we always underestimate, right? On your point about positive, right? We're in a world where all nature is being challenged, right? Because of climate change, because of biodiversity loss. And without energy transition, we're all going to be dead, right? So energy transition is needed. If we build more wind farms, it means ultimately there will be more benefits for nature and biodiversity. But also at the same time, I'm glad you're having me, not my colleague, who's a scientist on my team who likes to show ministers videos of birds flying into wind turbines without trigger warning. So I'm not going to do that to you, but you can Google it if you want to. Energy infrastructure, sometimes when they're planned by governments or multilateral development banks, they didn't sometimes just think, right, let's plan it where it's the cheapest, rather than let's also think about where is the major migration route of animals, of birds, because birds, although they're intelligent, since they existed, they never used to see what's in front of them, right? They see what's on the ground. So, that posed significant risk to the biodiversity of our planet. And so, which is why I think we need to join forces and together tackle this. And going back to multilateral examples, another one is at SB62, there are 8 folks from BirdLife International as a partnership. 7 of them are young people. One is the UN Youth Delegate of Belgium. 3 other are grassroots activists by day, and two other, including me, do their day job and youth advocacy on top of it. I think that's a great example of how BirdLife, being the world's largest nature civil society partnership, actually empowers young people, not putting it silo, but really the main team are full of young people, and usually about 30% of our delegates at COPs are usually under the age of 35, naturally, because we integrate that throughout our work. And 50% of our all delegates are usually come as part of party delegations. Many of them are negotiators as well. So that's just an example of how we also think about integrating youth empowerment in multilateral policy making. And then linking to national level, we've all heard about the nationally determined contributions, the national adaptation plans, the NBSAP, which is the one on biodiversity. I will not bore you with the full name. Sorry, hater. We all know that there's a lot of buzz about the synergies around them. And last year, for those of you who are into the technical stuff, as part of the Nature for Climate Coalition, we wrote this Nature in NDC guidance last year that has 15 bullet points to tell if you're a government drafting your NDC or other documents, here are ways how you can easily integrate these and together make your government's job easier and make the world a better place. So that's an example of how we link multilateral policy to national policy, and also that helps you as a government, your government, make your monitoring and reporting easier. And then that links to, of course, equally important NDCs or other national planning are important, but they can only drive the change we want to drive if they're being implemented. So I'll give you 6 very quick examples of how the work that me and my colleagues do are fostering synergies on the ground. 3 regional level examples and 3 national and cross-cutting examples. First, in Asia, BirdLife works with Asia Development Bank to co-convene this thing called the Regional Flyways Initiative. Essentially, we mobilize about $3 billion for a 10-year period working on various conservation priorities and environmental priorities. For example, we conserve wetlands. The first project happened in China this year. But by conserving wetlands, we deliver benefits for drought, we deliver benefits for climate together. So that's an example in Asia. And then looking to the host country region of our upcoming climate COP in Brazil, together with the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, the CAF, for those of you who are from the region. Together, we also co-convene something called the Americas Flyway Initiative. And we also aim to mobilize about $3 to $5 billion. Although, if you go to CAF's official website, to their official press release, instead of billion, they typed trillion. So my secret wish is that we'll get to hold them accountable, and I'll let you guys know. I will throw you all a free party if
maybe what's a trillion pesos. The dollars and pesos are weird.
If $5 trillion does arrive on my bank account, I'll definitely throw you all a party. But together, we co-convene the Americas Flyway Initiative, which also is very similarly is looking at how we protect, conserve, and restore nature and address biodiversity loss, climate crisis, and also other synergistic issues. So that's another example of how even the multilateral development banks are now seeing the real value of this, and their donor, i.e. the governments, are interested in putting real cash into this topic. And then another example because we all love the Americas, and this is the big year for them, there's also an initiative that we co-convene called Conserva Aves. Essentially, it's a conservation project. It's not just a conservation project. Actually, it's being framed as a conservation and climate mitigation project initiative that together across many countries in the Americas, we look at what we can do, what environmental actions we can do that benefits birds, biodiversity, and the present and the future generations. That is literally the focus of the whole project. And it's really getting a lot of attention from governments, from banks, as well as from multilateral funds. So I think there is a lot of attention, but we need to figure out how we mobilize those attention to really truly deliver for the local communities and the national civil society organizations. So that's, of course, has been a challenge, but I think there are good signals and there are growing awareness. Onto national, 3 examples. Save Brazil, which is BirdLife in Brazil. They are doing nature-based solutions projects in various states in the country, including in the North Coast in Pará, where many of us will be in November. And that also looks at how we do conservation projects that has a lot of climate benefits, but also linking to various other buzzwords, right? Key biodiversity areas, which is something that many conservation multilateral funds like the GEF recognize, and also IUC and many other buzzwords that I will not go into, is how do we design projects in a way that deliver multiple benefits that help the governments, different parts of the governments, the more political ones, the more technical ones, see the value. At the same time, how do we establish sites that are recognized as by the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands? So it's not just about our 3 conventions, it's also about the wetland one, the migratory species one. There's even one on mercury, right? There's everything. Another one is actually one that's very close to the heart of perhaps the Secretariat colleagues. The Joint Capacity Building Program talked about is done by colleagues from Real Impacts, which works with BirdLife in Sao Tome and Principe together to develop a fund called Ecotela, which is supported by the Global Environment Facility. And together with the government, with UNDP, we're looking at how do we channel the money to the local communities and to especially support, with the challenging context of a small island state. And then last but not the least, perhaps most close to my heart, is for the past 40 years, my colleagues, not me personally, my colleagues have been convening together with 2 other incredible organizations, the Conservation Leadership Program. It focuses on empowering early career conservationists. And I've got some stats here. It's been 40 years, 930 projects, and 4,400 early career conservationists in over 100 countries supported. So do check it out for those of you who are interested in conservation or have friends interested in conservation. Check it out. They provide funding, they provide training. It would be really fantastic to see this continue to grow. And in the past, we've supported people to do conservation, but also do UNFCCC policy. So, check it out. And I would love more people to want to do UNFCCC policy so I can snatch them onto my team. So that's my spiel. And of course, welcome any questions in the end, but hopefully it gives you a good example of what it looks like linking multilateral, national, and local action. Thank you so much, Kathy. I think that this was a lot to learn about the BirdLife International. Thank you so much for sharing different projects that you guys are doing. It sounds really interesting. Maybe if anybody wants to also talk a little bit about, and this is not to put anybody on the spot, but I don't know if there is anybody in the room who really wants to talk about how these 3 challenges, like these 3 crises, interact in your community, in the country, or in any of the experiences that you have previously. But of course, if you don't want to talk about it at this point, that is also completely fine, because Mara is very passionately waiting to work to talk about human rights, which is very crucial to understand then, because why are we talking so much about understanding all of this, is that you see the charts in this room. We will be doing some interactive activity together. So this will come down to some homework as well. So good to get the brain running and thinking about, okay, how these 3 interact and what are the benefits of the synergies, right? But yeah, while we are thinking about it, while we're already starting the thought process, I will pass the floor to Mara to talk about human rights and youth inclusion approaches in context to the Rio synergies.
Thank you very much, Sahar. I want to leave as much time as possible for the interactive session. So I'm going to try to be fast, but it's not on brand. I'm just going to let you know. So I'm going to make an effort. Just a quick overview. I'm not sure if this is displaying like the sorry, what? It's not showing the slides. Yes. I'm also going to present myself again, this time with a human rights cap. I'm also one of the previous contact points of the Human Rights Working Group in Yango. And we are currently developing the Climate Change and Human Rights Academy in the working group. If you are interested in learning more about this intersection, please do reach out afterwards. I can give you a bit of an overview. Oh, perfect. Okay, so this is a very easy to grasp, chart with the intersection between the conventions and the human rights, the fundamental human rights, such as between the Climate Change Convention and the right to life, the right to health, food, water, shelter, self-determination. Then we have between the Convention on Biodiversity and the right to a healthy environment, of course. Thank you. Indigenous land rights, cultural rights, the right to food. Each of these sections could be extended with any of the other rights, of course. There's so much intersection. There are so many synergies. And I feel like human rights are a particularly useful lens to look at the synergies. Desertification as well impacts the right to livelihood, water, development, food, housing, and participation. And this is just to give you a quick taster of why the conversation on human rights is really important across all three Rio conventions. Now, although human rights, at least from my opinion, and also the opinion of civil society in general, are not sufficiently incorporated in the conventions, there are some mentions. From the CBD, we see that the preamble acknowledges the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities. There's also Article 8J, which is highlighted for the commitment that it makes to respecting, preserving, and maintaining knowledge and practices of indigenous peoples and local communities. And then also there's a growing use of human rights-based approaches in the global biodiversity framework. We see a heavier focus on indigenous peoples and local communities, not so much on intergenerational equity or other aspects of human rights. In the Paris Agreement, in the UNFCCC now, in the Paris Agreement, we see in the preamble clear recognition of the importance of respecting and promoting human rights, and specifically the rights of indigenous peoples, and dear to us, intergenerational equity. This is one of the strongest mentions that we see on intergenerational equity, and it's something that we use in our advocacy work. Article 12 as well relates to public participation and transparency, which many times is not linked directly to human rights, but it's actually the right to information is really important, because it's what allows us to see what's happening and to assess it from a critical point of view. And then the right of participation, of course, it allows us to influence the processes that govern our lives. When it comes to the UN CCD, there are links to poverty eradication, to food security, the rights of vulnerable populations. There's also calls for participatory approaches involving local communities. So we can see that all across the conventions, this is something that is already recognized, but there's so much more that can be done. And youth can play a very important role in this sense, because we are one of the most affected categories of population, and we also have the capacity to mobilize. And I believe, especially when it comes to children's rights to also the rights of future generations and intergenerational equity. This is a point that we can bring forward with a lot of power and with conviction. Now, sorry. No, thank you. I'm I'm trying to speed up, but not that fast. Yeah. I feel like I should give you, before giving you the tips on how to use human rights in your advocacy, to give you a very short overview of what human rights, how human rights are implemented or protected in practice. And there are some human rights treaties, and there are bodies that implement these treaties, and there are special procedures. But I want to highlight in particular the Universal Periodic Review, which is a review of the human rights records of all UN member states, and then the regional human rights systems, which have been way of addressing human rights at the regional level that led to better results, more effective results than we've seen at the global level. And I want to highlight the European Court of Human Rights, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, and the Inter-American Court on Human Rights. These spaces provide avenues, especially the legal ones. The courts provide avenues for developing action that protects human rights, reparatory action as well, and which leads to the implementation of the conventions as well when these are not adequately implemented, and this leads to an infringement of human rights. Now, at the national level as well, there are human rights institutions and mechanisms for implementation and reporting, and of course, laws and policies. And we see that climate litigation is actually a tool that is more and more used in order to bring about climate justice. Coming back to the tips, my first tip is to use human rights language. When you make demands, when you make recommendations on text, do frame it in a human rights-centered approach. For example, instead of saying we want climate finance, saying that we demand equitable climate finance to uphold our right to development and a healthy environment. This is something that links not just it's not just about the demand, it's also about the context in which it exists. I want to remind you that all of the countries that are present here have signed in one way or another some commitments to human rights obligations. Many of them have already committed to very high standards that they are not really respecting when it comes to the climate inaction that they are complicit in. So I think it's an avenue that we can use to advance climate action, also more ambitious policies when it comes to biodiversity and desertification. It's important to also hold governments accountable, because these commitments are something that we can refer to and remind them of and use in practice. Really importantly, my third point is to build cross-movement alliances like we do today within the sister constituencies, sister youth constituencies of the 3 conventions, but also between organizations, between the human rights movement and the youth climate movement, for example. I think the fourth point might not be super clear what procedural rights might mean, but this is what I was mentioning earlier, the access to information, public participation, and justice. This is really important when it comes to defending rights. And it's by blocking access to information and participation that we are left in the dark, and we are left without the ability to contribute to the decisions that affect us first and foremost. And last but not least, using legal avenues. There are so many people here on ground as well, and the SBs, that are doing amazing work in this regard. And I want to highlight the WICJ, the World Youth for Climate Justice campaign, and also the Pacific Island Students campaign, because they have achieved something that no one, I think not even them, thought possible at the beginning, which is from a seminar, a law seminar in a university, studying the ICJ and the International Court of Justice and studying its mechanism. They found out about the mechanism of advisory opinions, where the International Court of Justice issues opinions that states need to take into consideration. And they thought, okay, why don't we do this on climate change as well? And the obligations that states have to defend the right to a healthy environment. And I think at the beginning it seemed like a crazy idea, but they have mobilized over the past years, and now we are the advisory opinion is about to be published. They have managed to mobilize states to support their proposal. States have been asked to make contributions. There were testimonies that the court accepted, and now we're eagerly awaiting the advisory opinion, which is going to be another instrument in your advocacy toolbox as well once it comes out. Now, as a last example, this is the human rights section from Yango's strategic policy position, and this is something that you could develop as well in your constituencies, in your organizations, in your groups. Make sure to include this aspect of your work, because it's something that gives another dimension, but also gives you additional tools, additional resources to advocate with. And I invite you again to scan the QR code if you haven't already. And when it comes to human rights in the next 2 weeks, feel free to use these paragraphs and quote them anytime. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Mara, for presenting so comprehensively on the human rights. And sorry for skipping the slide. Good. So first of all, maybe let's start. Let's start if we have any questions to what has been, for example, because we have talked about a lot of different bits and pieces of the convention, right? So let's check if there are any questions in the room, and if not, that we move forward to the next part of our work together today. Is there something that you want to ask? Are there any questions? Was there something that was not clear, for example? No? Okay. Then I would move forward with the understanding that we have all become experts on the Rio conventions and the synergies existing. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Thank you all. Once again, my name is Geraldine. I have about 2 questions. What role can youth play in ensuring transparency and accountability in how environmental funds are used, particularly in local communities? Because all of us here at the end of the day go back and do the grassroots work. And the second question is, what are the biggest barriers preventing youth from influencing decision making under the real conversions, and how can this be overcome? Thank you.
Good. This is a very interesting question. On the last one, I really much see this tied up to the activity that we were doing together, right? Because it is really much tied up with how we are trying to find out the common pathways, like in biodiversity, in climate change, and in land conventions. How we were trying to find out the common pathways in there. What are the potential possible common solutions? So if they are community oriented common solutions, for example, for example, from my community, planting more mangroves, for example, does not only stop flooding, but also helps kind of fertile the soil where it is, and also help a lot with the air as well, and save my city from extreme weather event due to climate change. And I'm specifically meaning the flooding, right? But if we have, for example, any potential solutions in terms of advocacy points, such as Mara mentioned very interestingly, the connection to right to a healthy environment, which can be a very key tool when we think about like all three conventions and potential solutions. So it talks about access to justice, access to information, but also what happens when a community is affected due to extreme weather event, due to climate change, right? So access to remedies as well when losses are happened, right? So those loss and damage conversation that we need to happen. So I think that there is an appetite for that second question in the interactive activity. So if that's okay, we move towards the yeah, sure.
Thanks. Sorry, I just needed to hijack this one. So we sort of all understand how the Rio conventions work. I'm again making assumptions, not sure, but these are party-driven processes, right? So who are the parties? The parties are the countries that are signatory to these conventions, right? And these parties all have designated national focal points. So why is it hard for young people to engage within these processes? Because it has to be, we have to have a better understanding of, okay, how do these processes work, right? It starts there. So UNFCCC, we have a designated national focal point, but I am a young person who does not even work in government. I work with civil society organizing, but national focal points usually come from within governments. What's my best way to actually engage within the process to ensure that my country actually takes forward what we are doing as young people? Identify who my national focal point is, right? Have conversations with them and tell them I'm actually interested in this process. How can we work together? Usually as young people, we always go with, but you're not engaging with us, right? We need to be at the seat of the table. You need to recognize us, but we never often offer solutions. So when you go to your national focal points, what's your pitch? How are you pitching yourself to them for them to say, oh, Kathy is someone I actually need to have on my team. Kathy is a young person that will bring perspectives of young people into this process, and I actually need to be able to work with them. Once you've shown what exactly you're able to offer, it becomes easier for them to say, I'll give Kathy a party badge, because when Kathy comes to the SBs, Kathy is not representing herself, right? Kathy is part of a country party delegation where she speaks for her country, but oh Lord, English. She's actually speaking about her lived experiences as a young person coming from a particular part of the world. And this is also the same thing that happens within CBD, within UNCCD, within UNFCCC. So what do we need to do as young people? First step is do not give up working our civil society organizing, but figure out how does that tie into the country deliverables within these processes, right? Once you have hacked that, then it becomes easier for even your national focal point when they're negotiating in that room to say, but young people in my country are doing A, B, C, D. We currently are pushing for the national actions for climate in countries which are the NDCs. So how do you ensure that your NDCs represent what young people are doing, right? And I think Kyungo has an NDC working group, right? And they have created these documents that you're able to actually share with your national focal points and tell them, when you're going to push for NDCs, this is the text we want you, that speaks for us as young people. Are you able to push for it? Because sometimes they don't have the time to actually even think about text that is youth representative. So if you do that heavy lifting for them, it becomes actually easier for them to have us represented in these rooms. And then also, young people are also coming up with innovations and solutions. I don't know how many of us have heard of the Youth Negotiators Academy that's now bridging the gap of saying, okay, parties before used to say, we don't have young people as part of our country delegations because we can't fund them. We don't even have the time to train them. So these young people have come up with this solution to bridge the gap of how do we train young people as negotiators such that they build their capacity so that countries don't say that, but these people don't have the capacity. No, they are training these young people and then handing them over to the country delegations and say, we've trained them, they are ready, and we've funded them, work with them. So that's the only way we'll be able to bridge these gaps. And they're doing this for all their conventions. They started with UNFCCC, they're now doing it with UNCCD, and now they're going to biodiversity. So again, if you're interested, if your national focal points are not willing to train you, look for the Youth Negotiators Academy and ask them, can you take me on? What's the process? How do I engage and how do I benefit from your programming? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet. So the 10 minutes we have left, or yeah, the 13 minutes we have left, do we want to actually think about actual solutions, ideas, project or policies that contribute in solving challenges related to land, biodiversity and climate? So basically, thinking of common solutions, but you can also think of different solutions as well, as we have, like, for example, the purpose of this Venn diagram to post, and think about solutions that can work individually for some. I know we discussed decision making a lot at climate level, for example. So if you have anything to share regarding either policy, community oriented solutions, either any projects, like Kathy shared a lot of projects, for example, yeah, anything that you have to say. Yeah, if people have their yeah, sure. So should we just get up and we can just use the one? So because we are little so less people, so we can use the one, but we can get up and start to write. So it will be embarrassing if we write nothing. So it's a little bit of pressure on you now. So let's start writing maybe. So, for example, on this one, we see a lot of synergies, which is good. We see some of the synergies between all three of the triple planetary crisis, hence the three Rio conventions, and we see some of the synergies between like 2 and 2. But is there somebody, because you wrote it, right? This is your work. So is there somebody who wants to talk about, some of the actions, projects, policy points, anything that you have written in here? Yeah?
So I wrote about capacity building of youth and how access to a lot of documents, information, toolkits that are put out by any formal established organizations, be it UN, WHO, UNFCCC, young or other, may not be accessible to young people and children because of the technical language that they are written in, and also because of the language that is being used, English itself. So I wrote about the two. So first is making it child and youth friendly. Maybe it's a short video form content or other things. And the second would be making it also in as many languages as possible, because this is also one of the advice, because I also represent the WHO Youth Council, and the main function is to advise the Director General over youth and children related matters. This is one of the things that we put in that advice as well from the Health Education and Literacy Working Group. So that is one. And the second is being culturally appropriate in terms of capacity building, because there is no unilateral way in which capacity building can work. So making it very culturally appropriate in terms of regions, nations, and cities, villages, etc. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I can really see how we can basically, really build upon it as well and divide it into things. For example, then where do the resources come from in order to make it linguistically inclusive and all of that. And this is why potentially, as we are here, good to follow, for example, the aims agenda item as well, and advocate for that. If we can, this can be like some of the action points potential, right? But good. Is there anyone else who wants to talk about their potential solutions or some policy asks or actions that they have written on the board? Did you have your hand raised? Okay.
I actually wrote about nature-based solutions. It's because nature-based solution, you had consider first the land, you had consider the climate of the area, and you have also to consider the biodiversity. So while you're trying maybe to solve a problem, for example, if it's hunger, you're trying to solve the problem of hunger by adapting different techniques of how to produce agricultural products. So you'd have to consider the nature of the area first and which methods or activities which can be implemented in the area so that you can conserve the land, also the biodiversity, and also it doesn't impact the climate. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'll just add on hers. I wrote solar cook stoves. That is to solve the issue of reliance on biomass. That is solving the problem of biodiversity and also helping to conserve the land and the forests, especially in Africa. I'll give an example, like for my country, Uganda. I think also Juliet can witness. Our biggest forest has been deforested because people cut down the trees to source charcoal wood to use and cook. So if our government can help in implementing and seeing that we have solar cook stoves, because most people cannot afford electricity cook stoves, but solar cook stoves would make it better. And then just to add on, one of our colleagues on capacity building, there is a lot of I would say that we are able to see capacity building from a point of privilege right now. But if we speak of other young people out there that are not even able to come to such meetings or get to the organizations that give access to capacity building, is there a way we could say that us that are equipped could be given, say, a mentorship program, say a 3-month program could be online because of the different time zones. It could be self-paced, and then it gives like orientation on how these different processes work, and then you're assigned like a cohort of people to also train, and then say after a period of a month or two you're supposed to come back and give feedback, and you coordinate. So you find that eventually over time we're going to build the the knowledge within the youth. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to directly respond to what she said? Okay. Yeah.
Just one thing to add, like by joining all of these elements, one of the most important maybe thing to do to upskill youth in order to be ready or fully equipped, to come up with solutions to these challenges is through, again, youth-led initiative programs or innovative programs like the Ecothon, Hackathon competition. Those, or the program like I mentioned earlier, the one I'm leading on, which is Youth for Sustainability. So it's a program that helps you voice out your thoughts, drive your ideas, and get educated on climate change crisis. Again, we're linking it to ACE and education. So this is the first step. You need to empower youth, push them in the front line. And then with that, they will, with the innovative programs like the Ecothon Hackathon competition, we'll be able, to raise some of the challenges that we are facing globally. And through, those working groups, we will be able, to come up with solutions. And then maybe through that, they'll start, not only encourage them to start new jobs, but also come up with, become a startup person, when come up with, a solution to an existing challenge we're facing in land, climate, or biodiversity. So engage on those programs like the Youth for Sustainability and especially the program, not just promoting about it, but it's really powerful, and it's a global platform that is open for all nationalities across the world. So whenever you're whether you are inside the UAE or outside the UAE, you're welcome to join the program. We usually open it in August. So we'll open the registration where you can sign up, and then by the end of the year, we'll be able, to come back to you and see whether you have been accepted to the program, and then you'll officially join us in January. And we do, put into consideration the time frame and all of those. And within the program, she mentioned mentorship program. This is something that we also provide to the youth, whether you have like an existing idea or solutions. We provide you with mentor that will help guide you with the tools and skills you need to upskill you and help you, come up with the best prototype solution to this. And we help you, connect with expert leaders and heads of states. And one of the biggest platform that we expose you is Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, which is one of the largest sustainability gatherings in the world that brings together policy leaders, heads of states, innovators, entrepreneurs. So we give a space for youth to connect with them and, exchange ideas and build collaborations. And the most maybe key that will help us also come up with our solutions is networking. So the more you connect with people, you do partnership. This is how we do it. It's by uniting together and upskilling ourselves with engaging on those platforms. And with that, you will be able, to connect the dots and then reach the overall challenges we're facing. Sorry if I'm speaking too much, but
No, that was really helpful. And can you repeat, for example, the name of the program in case anybody wants to?
called Youth for Sustainability. And we usually post everything over there, and we'll be announcing when the registration will be opened, mainly end of August or September. So join us. Let's make a difference.
Thank you so much. Is there somebody who wants to talk about their point from the notes? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. They have left. There was a lady who wanted a hand, but then I come next to.
Yeah, sorry, lady that left. Yeah, just very shortly, I mentioned agroecology cooperatives because I think it's a really great solution that both you can use like waste management approaches to reduce the emissions that if like we put food waste into the garbage, then goes to landfills and that emits methane and so on. But also you can use like this to create like biogas, or if you need a sort of energy, which is an alternative. And also it creates food security and food sovereignty, which is very important also to create the resilience when we're talking about the effects of the triple planetary crisis. Then if you are a youth community or a community, intergenerational community, you can then respond better to the effects, and you can create a place where people can gather and be around nature and diverse crops, etc., where you can maybe escape from the heat waves, but also find ways to create other co-benefits within your community. And yeah, that's it.
Oh, good. Is there someone else who wants to raise their point? Or should we call it a day? We can also do that, right? Because we have been here very committedly since 2 hours and 10 minutes. And we have a lot of other things going on as well. So if we want to just end it and call it a day, that would be completely fine as well. Yeah. But thank you so much to the Youth for Capacity team for organizing the session, and our wonderful people who could actually bring substance and ideas and energy to this session. So thank you so much, Mara, Kathy, and Juliet as well, who is not here in this room. But thanks to all of them. And maybe I give it to Eva to close. And
I think all has been said, but I think the beauty of this exercise that you guys did is that everything is synergy. Clearly, biodiversity, climate, and land are not isolated challenges, and solutions should not be treated as such. So no, thank you for being a part of this session. We hope you stay connected, keep building your capacities, because it's definitely a journey, but mostly thank you to the wonderful team, Mara, Sahir, Kathy, Hater as well, because you've been sticking around for this entire time. Juliet, that just left, for again sharing us with all your knowledge and insights, but to all of you as well for being a part of it and for building each other's capacity. So yeah, thanks again and take care.